everyone, it's Miss Kelly from the Waconda Area Library. I'm here to show you what we're doing with this month's Art to Go. And in honor of the library's Blue Fox mascot, we're going to make our own little Blue Fox stuffy. Here's a mini one. I thought it was a little bit easier for you to see what yours is going to look like. Ours is going to be a little bit bigger. You can see. So you can see that some of it is stitched and some of it is glued, and then even the eyes, we're going to draw those on. So inside your kit, you're going to find 2 pieces for the body, the front part from the body. This is going to be his face, some cheeks, 2 little rear paws, 2 pieces for your tail, some ears, and then you're just going to have a little scrap like this. This is what we're going to use to cut our nose out with. And inside your kit, you're going to have some thread and a needle and some glue. So all you'll need from home is some scissors and a black marker so you can use that to draw the eyes on. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to do the gluing first so that can work on drying when we get our sewing ready. So let's move the needle and thread aside. The first thing you can do is pretty easy. You're going to take the tip of your foxtail and match it up to the blue part of the tail. And you can tell, you might have to turn it around to see, it's going to fit pretty perfectly on there. So you can tell when you have it in the right spot, it'll fit really nicely on the edges there. Okay, so you've got your little pot of glue. One important thing to remember about when you're gluing with felt, put it on kind of thin because it'll still, you don't want to just show through. This is, this is that nice tacky glue that pretty much disappears when it's dry, but if you put it on really clumpy, you'll have like kind of wetter spots that'll show through some more. So lightly put your glue on, but make sure you go all the way around the edges because you want it to stick on pretty well. And if you see, I came a little bit away from the edge so it doesn't seep out the side. All right, let's match that guy up on there. Curve it on. You can see their curves should match. Some of the cutting felt, sometimes it can get a little fuzzy. You might find that you need to take your scissors and trim a little bit of the fuzz off the sides. You can really see, like on this one, there's like some fuzzy pieces. You can go ahead and trim that off with your scissors if you want. Felt's not too hard to cut, but I recommend when you do cut, you cut it really slowly, otherwise it does kind of drag. All right, I'll set that tail to the side to dry. All right, next we're gonna work on the face. So you're gonna take this section and these are gonna be cheeks. So you're gonna put those little cheeks on like this. Okay, remember we're gonna save a spot because up here is where we wanna draw the eye on. Put a little dot of glue on the back of both of those. I know it's tempting to just put a little dot right in the middle, but we don't want the edges to lift up, so make sure you kind of go close to those edges. Just make sure that you make them even. Good. Get a cloth. So next you're going to put on the feet. To do this, I want you to set him on the body. You can see like that. I kind of judge where he's going to go by, if you see that little dent in the side, you kind of line those dents up. All right. So this is how we'll measure where our feet go. So we just need one part of the body for right now. Okay. Get him lined up, make sure he's straight. Okay. So I want my feet to kind of face out like this a little bit. I want them to go to the bottom of the body, but not hanging off the body. So I'm doing it like this so I can judge and see where they need to go, okay? So I'm gonna pull that off there. And then I'm gonna glue my feet on. And I am just going to glue the part that's gonna be on here. So I'm gonna go like this and go straight across here. Okay. Let's see, there's the one. And then I'm just gonna do the same thing on the other side. So later on, if you wanna glue the rest of that foot all the way down, we have to wait until it's on the body. So let's just get this in the right position for right now. Okay, and then you can kind of check and see if you like how that looks. I like how his little feet are kind of turned up like that. Kind of like he's sitting and his feet are kicked out a little bit. All right. There. Yeah, it's up to you. I like the way it looks like this. It kind of gives him his little feet like he's sitting. It looks very cute. You guys can decide how you want to do your fox. Remember, it's your art. All right, so now that we've got this portion of the gluing done, we're gonna set this to the side and get ready to do your sewing. So to take your thread, you don't need a double length of thread. You're just gonna thread it through once, and you're just gonna have a little length here at the top, and then you're gonna make a knot at the bottom. So this is a single thread, it's not doubled over, okay? And if you can see, you need to make sure that your sides are on the same side facing each other, because otherwise they're a little bit different on one side. You can see one side's a little bit rounder and one side's a little bit straighter, so the shape of the fox is a little bit different. So before you sew, you want to make sure you match your sides up really well. Okay. You can see it's like that. All right. Ears are going to go on at the end up here at the top, so you can put the ears to the side. So in order to make this easiest for us, we're going to start right here on this first dent, right here. And we're gonna sew all the way around to here until we're ready for the tail, okay? So by the time we get to the tail, hopefully all our gluing is done drying so we can add these elements in, okay? So let's go ahead. Remember what I always say, you do not have to be an expert sewer to do this. We're just gonna do an easy little loop. I think part of the fun of making these kind of stuffies is actually the little stitches showing. Just gonna go pull it all the way through. Remember, you're kind of holding that piece there, okay? So pull it all through. If you make your thread really long, it's really hard to control. It tends to get tangled up. So if you need to just sew a little bit and then put another piece of thread on, we can always do that. You just tie it off and add a new one on. It's better to do it that way than end up with a bunch of tangles. It'll get very frustrating when you're trying to get all your tangles out. So we're just gonna come, and you can see you're gonna poke up from the bottom. And you can look, you can see where it's coming up. If you don't like where it is, you can move it. So I'm gonna try and do it a little bit away from the edge and about the same distance every time I do it, and then just pull it through. There you go, there's your first stitch. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and try and do this all the way around. Just take your time, and it's okay to have a little help if you need some help. Just stop and check every once in a while. Make sure you're doing about the same distance apart. Make sure you're going through both pieces and keep your pieces lined up. So if you can see, I'm pinching those two pieces together to keep them in the right spot. Go ahead and look. You can see? All right, so go ahead and sew around to the bottom here. We're gonna sew to the bottom. All right, so here we are. Across the bottom, we've sewn all the way across the bottom, kept them fairly even. The biggest part is to make sure you don't leave too big a gaps because you don't want the stuffing to come out the side, so you can see it's pretty even. Right? And if you still have enough string to keep going, you're good. Otherwise, if we need to stop and tie it off and add a new string, we can. Otherwise, it's time to add the tail. So I've gone all the way across the bottom because this is where I want the tail to be, if you can see it like that, okay? So we're gonna open up the two layers. We're just gonna pop the tail inside. Just kind of sandwich it in there. And then now this is up to you. You need to decide if you like a tail like that. You want it down, more, up. You can just decide how you want it, okay? Just make sure it's in there far enough that when we sew, we're gonna go all the way through it, okay? All right, so I think I like mine right like that. So I'm gonna keep pinching that together like that, but now I can feel I'm also holding the tail in there. And then I'm gonna take my needle and thread. Go under. Just keep doing what I've been doing, but this time I'm gonna go through the tail. The nice thing about felt is it is pretty forgiving. If you feel like you went through the wrong spot, you can take your needle off and pull the thread back through. Because the way we're sewing, you can. So I'm just gonna come through. Oops. Right here. I do every time I come through, I kind of poke that needle through a little bit and check and see if I like where it is. I go, that's too far. Remember though, it is a real needle. It's sharp, but then we do have to be careful. Okay. All right, so now I'm going right through that tail. You can feel it's a little thicker. You're gonna have to push a little harder when you're sewing through another layer now. So now when I go down, I'm gonna go down through that tail, okay? All the way down. You can see I captured his tail now. Okay. Come up. So you're still sewing the same way you were before, but this way, instead of just going around the edge, you're actually going down through the tail. Don't worry, buddy, this isn't gonna hurt a bit. Now we're gonna go ahead and keep sewing all the way through, and we're gonna come sew all the way up till we get to the top this time. Kind of right here, okay? So we'll go all the way up to about here, because then we're gonna have to add ears, okay? So go ahead and sew that through. All right, so we stopped again. Now it's time to add the ears, okay? So I think you guys had a good practice with the tail. So now that we practice with the tail, we're gonna do the same method we did for the tail. You can see your triangles are the same. Just make sure you get them. There we go. Kind of figure out where you want your ears. Okay, we like it like that. All right, and you're gonna do the same method. You're gonna just put it in between there. And we're gonna pinch it and then sew it. But you can put them both in and check and see if you like them. See if they're even, if you like the way they look like that. Okay, look pretty good. All right, and then we're gonna do the same method we did for sewing in the tail, okay? So we're gonna sew in this one ear, and then we're gonna stop and talk about the stuffing, okay? Same method. It's in there enough where I can pinch it and hold it. I can feel it in there, and I'm just gonna go through. Just gonna see. Whoops. Just do like I'm showing you here with this, when you're coming through. You're just gonna gently push a little bit so you're not gonna poke yourself. You can see where it's coming through, but I'm definitely having to push it a little harder to get it through those 3 layers of felt instead of just the 2. This might be a spot where you need to get a little help. All right. Just don't want to poke yourself. Do you know when I really first started, you could even go ahead and take a little marker or a pencil and make little dots where you want to sew through, so you know exactly, so you can aim right for that dot and you can see it come through and put it right on the dot. But I think it's more fun when it looks a little bit imperfect. All right. Oops. All right, now that we've got this first ear secured, we're gonna go ahead and add the stuffing, because it's easier to stuff it, because the stuffing, we want to get it all the way down to the bottom, and we want to make sure that you have a big enough opening to get it in. So it might make the sewing the other ear in a little bit trickier, but it's definitely easier to stuff it. But I think by the second ear, you guys will be experts. All right. So before we do the stuffing, you want to make sure that your ear is fully secured. That guy's not quite all the way in there. Let's get that one more stitch in. There we go. Now the corner is in there. All right, so we've got our tail and our one ear totally secured, and I made sure we went all the way to the edge of the ear before I stopped, because I wanted to make sure that corner was in there. Now you're gonna take your stuffing, which is included in the bag, and we're gonna take this opening. I'm just gonna move the needle to the side. We're gonna leave it on there and fill it in. I gave you a lot, so it's up to you. You can make it really stuffy and kind of like a little really puffy fox, or you can make them more flat. It's up to you if you want how much of a stuffy you want them to be. But I want you to make sure you take your fingers and push it all the way down into the bottom, because I want it to have that nice round shape. So that's why we left a bigger opening, at least for me, because my hand's definitely bigger than you guys'. I'm sure you guys could do a look. You can feel it's nice and firm. Okay, I'm gonna do a little bit more on the top. Stuff his head. This is what's gonna make the sewing tricky now. Remember, there's 2 things that are gonna make it tricky. First of all, getting all the fuzziness in, because it's very fuzzy. You can see the stuffing is very fuzzy. You wanna get that all in there. And you still need to hold it together, get your ear on. You still gotta add that other ear. Right. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pinch it together and test it. I think it looks pretty even, pretty nice. Okay. The other thing is to remember, once it is full, you can kind of manipulate it like this from the outside. You can squish it around. So you can pretty much get it to where you want it inside now, but you can also squish it around a little bit after it's done, okay? All right, now for the tricky part, we're gonna add a few stitches in the middle and then that other ear. So one thing you can do is you can look at your fox and you can check and see exactly where that other ear needs to go. So I can see mine is gonna go, it's gonna go right about here to make it even. So right on the inside there, I'm gonna take my marker and make a little dot just to help me keep track of where I'm at when I'm sewing, okay? I don't wanna see it on the outside, I'm just gonna make it on the inside, a little mark there, okay? All right. Pinch that together and put a few more stitches. This is going to be tricky. You've got to pinch it together to keep all that stuffing together. And sew this up. You're just going to keep on doing that same thing. Remember, if some stuffing is leaking out, you can see the fuzziness out, we can trim that off after you're done. Just careful. Keep doing our careful stitches all the way across. This is going to be a perfect craft for you to do with all this upcoming really hot weather we've got coming. So be a good thing to do while you're inside on a really, really hot day. Just take your time. I'm gonna stop and check. I'm not at my spot yet. A few more stitches. This is why we didn't glue on the rest of the face either, because when it's really puffy, you've got to kind of mush it around like this. We didn't want to do any damage to the tummy and the face. Okay. I think I'm at my spot. I'm going to check and see. Looks like it's ear time. Yep, I want my other ear right there. The same thing, you're just going to pinch your ear in there like we did. And then look at it and check and see if your ear is the same height. You want to make sure you've got your ears the same height and in the same angle. So if you've got one kind of leaning out, you want the other one to lean the same. You don't want one, you know, going this way and one. Let's check. Let's see, got them. Looks pretty good. And then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to pinch it together. Make sure you've got that little edge in there so you can hold it when you feel like you can feel it in there. Don't worry, you're going to kind of push the stuffing back out of your way. We'll move it back over a little bit when we're done with the ear. And check and make sure your ears are even. I think mine look pretty good. And I'm going to start doing that double layer sewing again. Remember, you're going to have to push through the thickness. Another good thing to do is kind of check in the back and make sure you've got it pinched in from the back too. We want to make sure you're going all the way through. Okay, and just keep your edges lined up. I know it seems kind of tricky, but you guys have been doing this with me for a while and I think you have the skills. We can do this. Just take your time. Once you've got your ear all the way on, make sure we do that last corner like we did on the other one. You're just going to have this one little section left to sew closed, but I recommend you stop at the edge of your ear. And you can take this time while you still can. If you can't use your finger, you could always use a chopstick or a pencil. And reach in there and kind of poke your stuffing around. Even at this time, if you decide you want to add a little bit more stuffing, you can add a little bit more stuffing right now. All right? And then you're just going to take that and close up that last section. All right, so here he is sewn all the way around. I just tied off that end there and tied a little knot, and I trimmed off the excess thread. All right, it's time to finish our face. So here's our the front of our body that we got ready, and this is when you're going to need your marker. You're going to add a couple little eyes. I did these little half circle eyes like that on mine. You guys can do them any way you want. So I'm going to do on this one too. I'm going to do a little kind of smiling. I feel like those little cheeks are kind of pushing his eyes up like that, so that's what I want to do. Okay. Some fuzz on there. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get that glue again and push it a little bit. And then I'm going to line all the way around the outside here. Make sure I get the edges really well. I'm not going too close to the edge. I'm keeping a little distance because I don't want it to leak out. But I'm gonna be more generous. I really want this to stick on there well, so you guys can put a pretty good coat. And then I'm gonna make sure I go on the inside too. Okay. Alright. Make sure it's the white side of his tail is tip up. Remember, we're kind of using those little dents in the sides for guides. And just give him a good press down, and then you can fluff him back up when he's done. All right, and one more thing. Remember that little extra piece I gave you to cut a nose with? Use your little extra piece, and you're gonna cut your little nose out. I've got mine here, I already pre-cut. I'm gonna give him a little dot of glue right here. Fuzzy felt. Put his little nose on. And there you have your finished fox. You might need to let your glue dry a little bit more. You might go back and check and make sure the edges that have adhered really well. Just kind of let it sit for a while and let your glue stick down really well. Send me pictures of your finished project. You can even bring your fox into the library to visit me. I hope you have fun. We'll see you soon. Bye now.